Hoi Toide on the same side. Last night the water forward, night moonshine, no fish. What you supposed to matter, Uncle Woods?
I think it was like second summer after the bro people had been down interviewing me. They had either read the story somewhere or heard about it or seen it on TV or something other. And I was sitting up here by the cash register, just, I don't know, reading the newspaper or something other. And this man and woman walked in. And I was like, hi, how are y'all? You know, and they walked around stuff and everything. And the lady come out and she said, speak. And I said, excuse me? She's like, speak. And I said, what do you mean speak? I'm talking to you right now. No, you have this way that you're all supposed to talk down here. Speak. And I'm like, ma'am, this is the way I talk. I've lived here 30-some years. I said, and I've always talked like this. So that was basically about the story. She wanted me to speak. And I got ready to say, well, you going to give me a biscuit? And I'll be glad to speak.
It wasn't inhabited at all until then, and then we had this, you know, because Ocracoke Inlet was the only inlet that stayed open and hadn't shifted or changed or filled in. And so John Gray Blunt from over the mainland, Blunt's Creek was named after him. He owned one of the biggest shipping companies, and he owned big farmland, a lot of slaves and whales. So he and another man, John Wallace, set up a place over on what we call Shell Castle Rock, which is in Ocracoke Inlet, for shipping. They built warehouses and wharves and all this. So the ships, you know, were coming in and unloading here, and then they take them by smaller boats and deliver the supplies on through the thing. So there was this need, even before that, there was this big need for pilots, because the sandbars in the inlet would change, and the ships, you know, would get aground or crash waves. So the government sent pilots here to settle, and they laid off some land for them to have a place to put up their boats and build shacks to live in and whatever. And that was the first settlers that came. Same thing at Portsmouth. And those pilots that came here in 1715 are the local names Dutch. They stayed in that.
Well, according to legend, it was an Indian name. Claim, you know, Blackbeard. You ever heard that about Blackbeard? Ocracoke and all that stuff, you know, wanting the fowls to crow or the roosters to crow, so they could get out of the inlet. I think that's gone.
Well, they always said that Blackbeard laid out here in the inlet, and he found out Lieutenant Maynard, I reckon, was after him. They said, I believe that's the way it is, but he wanted to get going. He wanted to get out of the inlet, and when the rooster crows in the morning, it's getting close to daylight. So he said, "Oh, cock crow." And after that, the old cock crowed and he went out, but they changed the name around. Ocracoke, that's what I've always been taught.
Well, it's an Indian name, you said. They spell it 2-3 different ways. Not we don't, but I've seen it in different places. Spelled a couple of different ways. They claim it's an Indian name. Ocracoke. Okicho, everything but Ocracoke.
So what do you call the people who live on Ocracoke?
Ocracoke.
Some people call them Ococks, but
Ocockers. Now, here's one of the older ones that say Ococker.
Yeah?
When you hear him say Ococker, most times he's one of the older ones.
You all probably might not can tell the difference here, but the Pointers talk different from the Creekers right here on this island. Some expressions and are still different, but used to it was really, really different. And the reason for that was because it was like two communities. I mean, they were really divided, the Creekers and Pointers. I'm a Creeker. People that live on this side of the creek, Silver Lake, you might know it as right here. It's not.
Okay.
It's not a lake. It's a creek. It opens and flows to the same. But anyway, people on this side are Creekers, and people that live on the other side by the lighthouse are Pointers.
Because they live on the point.
Mm-hmm. And at one time, from the creek to the beach, there were what we call drains. There were two streams of water, or ditches that went. One right where Creekside Cafe is, and the right where the road turns there. Mm-hmm. One cut through there, and then further over there was another one, along about where Sharon Miller's realty, and that was another that went on through it. And there were two bridges on each piece of each ditch. One on the creek side of each one of them, and one over, like one by the island end and one over that further. Those two bodies of water separated the creekers and the pointers. And at one time it was like, I mean, you just didn't have anything to do with a pointer. Well, the pointers didn't have anything to do with the creeker.
I had some pictures one time out to the restaurant, and I was going through some old photographs, and everybody used to talk about, well, they built all these houses out of all these ships, and I thought, oh my, when I was a kid, I thought, well, big deal, how much boards can they get out of a ship to build a house? Well, I never thought about that until I never realized that until I took some photographs out and saw the size of somebody standing on the beach and that ship on the side. Now that was the difference. I mean, some of those ships that come ashore here were absolutely massive boats. I mean massive. And those whole things, you know, like you see, the only reason that they're left on the beaches is because that's all was left. You know, everything else was carted into to make the houses out of. So you'll never find boards from one. Those round beams they couldn't use. So that's the only reason that they're there. Because they'd have toted them out and used them in the village too. I mean, most of the straight beams and stuff out of the, or, you know, seals and stuff out of the seals to the houses and stuff were from the boat.
He used to cure Yaupon. Cure Yaupon for tea. He used to cure that.
Okay.
See? He used to have a big vat. Dug a hole in the ground. Threw that onto it. He used to have a lot of stones, you know. You heat them stones that far into that vat. You take them stones and put it right on top of the Yaupon to kill it.
Now, did they use the berries from the Yaupons, or the leaves, or roots, or?
They just used the leaves.
Just the leaves. Just the leaves.
A few of the tender stuff.
Yeah.
I went up to and through the 8th grade. At that time, they didn't have anything any higher, but a year or so later, they did get to high school, but I was too far gone. Too far out. I didn't get in no higher than that. I'll show you my certificate before you go out. It's hanging up in there. A Portuguese school principal signed that certificate in 1927. One of the best teachers I ever had. And what I don't know, it wasn't his fault, because he tried to drill it into me. Yes, sir. I give him a lot of credit. Nice fellow. He went too tall. He stayed here. There was an inn down here. The hurricane got in 44, but he stayed there that winter. He put his bathing suit on. It never been so cold. He'd run on the dock, dive overboard, and swim around and come on up the ladder, run right back and put his clothes on and go to school. Yeah, he was a good man. Good man, yeah. His name was John Andrew.
Days when they used to have the horse penning. The horse penning.
When
them days they used to pen once a year. Horses.
Thin the ponies out?
Yeah, and they used to pen once a year to brand the coat. And I think from that time, everybody had a good time on the island in the 4th of July.
Is that when they would traditionally do it?
That was our regular day we spent for 4th of July, penning horses. And the sheep pen too was there. I missed that worse than this was. Sheep penning.
There were sheep on the island too?
Sheep on the island, yeah. We had a lot of sheep on this island. Yeah. Well, they built the highway, you see, and you had to take them off. I had about 25 head of sheep.
Well, when they had the horse pennings, were the horses offered for sale to the public, or? Yeah,
they sell them out, pen them out sometimes, you know.
Right.
Yeah, we had a lot of horses here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was about our biggest day we ever had.
We used to have a pony penning every 4th of July. I would have picked my father and our boy. Yeah, we had a pony penning. They see the horses run wild. You'd go down the night before, the evening before, the ones that was going to drive the horses back or the ponies back and go on the north end and camp out, and then start daylight the next morning. There was like 5 or 6 different bunches. Each stallion had anywhere from 8, 10, 15, 20 mares. Yeah, they stayed in groups. You'd start penning them. one group would catch up to the other, you know, they'd fight all the way up, coming all the way up to the penny. The last pony penny they had was right where the new part of the island inn is now.
Back, I don't know when it was, probably about it was in the early 50s, about 1952, a fellow named Marvin Howard retired from the Army Corps of Engineers, and he was originally from Ocracoke and moved back here. And he just liked to ride horses, and of course most of us boys then had horses, or we could get horses. And he decided to form a mounted Boy Scout troop. And at that time, it was the only mounted Boy Scout troop in the world.
Right.
Yeah, there's pictures hanging up in the restaurant of a bunch of us boys on our horses and scattered around. There's pictures. Boys Life came out, did a big article on it, had our pictures in it, and let's see what. There's 2 or 3 Life magazine.
In the middle of this beach where the airport is, between here and there, we boys, we sharpen us a stick, a broom handle, or put a nail in. What would happen is sea tide would run over, and the sound tide would come up, and it cut holes in the beach, big holes in the beach, you know, and flounders, fish, you know, trout, drums, would get in that hole and couldn't get back out. After the storm were going, sand all around them, so they got a hole in the beach, and we boys would take a broom handle and put us a nail in or a sharpie, and geek flounders, and trout, and puppy drums, yeah.
Did you go meet the mailboat when it would come?
I wouldn't, but some other people meet the mail. A lot of people meet the mailboat. When she came, we used to have the mailboat bring mail in, and used to be the post office on the other side of the creek, but it's not there anymore. The kind of mail too. People used to go and meet the mailboat down to the wharf.
Old Horatio, which was my great-grandfather, and it was Elizabeth's grandfather, he was a character. He had a sailing vessel that was built on Ocracoke and put together with tar and pegs, and he would go all up the coast to buy, you know, that's where they got all their food and furniture and everything. And he did go and took Elizabeth's mother, when she was a young girl, to New York, and somebody else went with her, and they went on a buying trip. But he was a catbird. During the Civil War, he was stationed in South Carolina. I think it was South Carolina, and he went around and told his crew that they're getting out at 12 o'clock. The orders was for nobody to leave the harbor, but he said, "No Yank's going to keep me here." So he left. And they said the guns were firing everywhere, but they made it. And when they got in this inlet, which was the only inlet at that time, we had an inlet, but it was very shallow. That went this way. And he said, "We're not stopping at Ocracoke. We're going to sink our vessel." So he took and went up the river. And he said, "Sink the vessel and leave the mast out about a foot so I can raise it when the war is over." And I would say bad words, because he did say bad words. "No damn Yankee's going to fight the sides of my ship." And of course then everything was cut off. They had no way of getting anything to eat here. And these Yanks came over. We had Yanks that settled here, and they were hungry. And somebody said, "Well, go to Horatius, he has plenty of chickens to sell." So my grandmother, I remember her. She was a dainty little thing. And she went to the door, and these boys were all dressed in their uniforms, and said, "We want to speak to Horatio, Captain Horatio." So Grandpapa came to the door, and they said, "We would like to buy some chickens." He said, "Don't ever let it be said that I sold a Yank any chickens. Go out and steal them like you had everything else in the house." And so did they? Grandmama said that those boys laughed until tears came down their face because Grandpapa wouldn't take their money. One time on the island, we did not have but one motel or hotel, and it was called Bill Gaskill's. I don't know whether you've heard this story or not. No. But Bill Gaskill had a real nice place, and they all ate together in the dining room, and family business-like. And he had a son called Jim Baum, and during the Second World War, he was on an oil tanker, and his oil tanker blew up somewhere between here and Florida. And his cousin was walking up the beach and saw this wood thing floating and waited until it washed ashore, and it was his cousin's cabin door license on it. The next day, the name of the oil tanker came into that inlet down there, had to come 5 miles up and washed in his father's yard. And that is the truth. And his sisters, I think one of them was married to a doctor in Raleigh, if I'm not mistaken. See, I wasn't here at that time. And his 2 sisters had a man that did carving down here, carve out a cross out of the wood, and it's in our church. It stands in our church right under Christ's picture, and on both sides they have the candles, and that was quite wonderful, I think.
State papers gives you more about their lifestyle than anything else that you can study. They didn't have a will, then they had state papers. The court would appoint an administrator, and the administrator would have to take an inventory of everything that person owned when they died. I mean, everything. How many forks, knives, cut with a broken handle, everything they owned was listed. And then they had a public auction, and it was all auctioned off. And there was no welfare, and the court took the money, and then they allotted the widow and the children so much per year for their support. Everything was, except for the real estate and the property wasn't. That was usually held until the children came of ours, and then it was divided up. But the personal property was sold, the slaves were sold, and that was put for the support of that family.
So you couldn't will stuff to people at all?
You could, but I'm saying if they died without a will.
Now, in addition to that money then being divided up for the widows and the children, have you come across information about how the widows support themselves beyond that money? I mean, was it enough where they could just live? Or were there jobs available for widows to support their family?
No, and usually, once in a while you'd find where they got money, but most of the time they didn't. They were allotted so many barrels of pork. They were allowed so many barrels of pork, so many barrels of flour, so much molasses for that year. And it was given to them as food or whatever, and not money.
So pretty much that was enough for them to live off of then after that, so that took care of them.
And usually I find that most of the women, they did took in laundry or, clean house for somebody or did something like that to help support them. But most of the time they remarried. I mean, it was almost a necessity to remarry if you had a big family. And the other thing I have found, and not just Ocracoke, but other genealogies I've done too, a lot of times they married, like if the husband died and the woman is left with children, she might marry the husband's brother. He might take on that responsibility of taking care of those kids and that woman, and he would marry her. But more often than that was if the woman died, and a lot of women died at childbirth, her sister would probably come in and take care of the baby and the children and then end up marrying her. But many, many, many times the sister marries the husband and takes care of the children.
Like some of our recipes where they are, culture differences, one particular recipe that the island has, and they make blackberry dumplings out of the blackberries, which everybody makes blackberry dumpling. Well, they make an egg sauce to go on top of it, and they beat the white of an egg. They separate the egg, they beat the white of the egg in one bowl like they would meringue. Then they take the yellow and beat that up and put some like lemon or vanilla into it, flavoring into it, and then put sugar into it, then dump that in the meringue and mix it all together, and you eat it like whipped cream on top of the dumpling. And it's been all of our lives. It's been on here as long as we know. As far as the health department to think that you're eating raw eggs. You know, just beaten, they have a spell, you know, because they're in this thing about, you know, eggs and all that, salmonella, you know, and all that, so they're real particular about that. But all of our lives we did that, and that's one of Ocracoke's most famous, you know, at least it is with the locals, you know. Yeah. Well, that's a very French, you know, very French recipe, and nobody knows how it even got here. I mean, they don't even half the locals probably don't even know it's French. You know, they just think it's Ocracoke, you know.
Mm-hmm. We come back into harbor, prettiest day you ever saw. One of the fellow in the crew said, "There goes Washie Spencer with all the rope he can tote." Said, "We must be going to have a hurricane or something. He's coming down to put some new rope on his boat and re-tie it up." So we come up and tied our rig up to put like we always did after we got our fish out. And we come home and they said, "We're going to have a hurricane tonight." I said, "Gee, yeah, we don't look like it now." About 4 o'clock the next morning, this squall, it would blow and rain, and it would 15, 20 minutes, it'd die down. The other 15 or 20 minutes, it would do the same thing, but a little harder and a little worse. It did that, it woke me up by 4 o'clock, and it kept doing that till 10 o'clock that day, till that wind got over 100 miles an hour. And there was 27 inches of water on this floor. Of course, I've raised it up 33 inches since then. Couldn't keep dry down here, so I had to go upstairs. But I want to tell you, 2 or 3 houses went off, that church went off the foundation. Another bungalow out here did. When after 10 o'clock, the wind died down and all the water ran off just as fast as it came up. We went down to see our boats. There wasn't a thing afloat in the harbor. Everything we had was sunk. Right in the middle of the fishing season, September. That's when we did our hauling, September, October, November. But before we got our stuff back in shape, fishing, that type of fishing was over. And somebody said, "Well, didn't do you no harm, didn't tear your house up." I said, I'll never know how much harm it did, because I've lost a year's work.
That was the storm. This was another pig we're talking about. I had a new maple bedroom set, and I had just got it in the house 3 or 4 days when this storm came, the 44 storm. We had a pretty day just like this. No wind, pretty sunshine. And the neighbor come over that day and said, "There's a bad storm heading right straight for us." And we didn't believe it. There ain't no storm, you know, there ain't no storm coming. Said, "Yes, it's heading right straight for Cape Hatteras." And it was a pretty calm day. And that night, after it got dark good, Harry went out on the porch, and the stars was shining. He said, "I don't think there's no storm." He said, "It don't look like a storm." And everything was calm. But let me tell you, when we woke up the next morning, I thought the roof was going to come off the house. I never heard such a hard wind. It was 100 miles, blowing 100 miles. I never heard such a hard wind. And he said, "You better get up and get all them kids ready and get them dressed. We'll have to leave here." And I was working fast as I could to get them all and put them to the table, and hurried with give them breakfast and everything. And here we looked, the tide was rolling right in the yard. It come up so fast, it was rolling in the yard. And we got them, and that's when we left. And when we left out of that gate, I tell you, it was about 4 foot of water in the gate when we left out. And we had to leave out in a boat. And when everything, but anyway, we had a half-grown pig, and he didn't want him to drown, you know. And we put him in he had an old big wooden trunk. The old-timey trunks. So we put him in that trunk and put the trunk on the porch. And I said, "Well, that pig float around in that trunk, he'll think he's in a boat, you know." And we went over to this Mickey's, where Mickey's lives over there, close to that graveyard down there. That's where we spent that storm, you know, out. So when the tide all run off, that evening late, right, Harry said, "I'm going up to the house, see if we got a house." We didn't even think we had a house. And I said, "Can we go?" "No." He said, "You better stay here. Wait till I go." So when he come back, he had sad news to say. He said, "I'll tell you." He said, I saw the house was standing." He said, "But the door was wide open, had blown open." And he said, "And the first thing I met was the pig coming out of the living room."
The last real bad one they had, of course they had some since then, the last real bad one they had was 1944. Dad was here in the Coast Guard. Dad said there never was a prettier day. There was a fella here that was named A. Bryant. You might have heard of him. He was a man that took care of the paper, you know, paper print and stuff. And he was down to Beaufort boarding for a while in Beaufort, and then he went up to Manuel. Yeah. Well known, well smart man. He told them that evening he got attached to the Navy somehow or other. Intelligence, intelligence officer or something, maybe. And Dad said he come around and told them all said we're going to have a bad hurricane. Everything was beautiful, weather, beautiful. Everybody looked at him like it was crazy. But that day, and it come in, of course I was in the Pacific again, I was in the Philippines. We had a typhoon about the same time war. I got caught in that. Typhoons over there. Anyway, Dad was done in the service, and Horace and Julius Ross and some more of them fellas around here. They had what they call a beach boat. It's dolly you go up to sea with, row your net out, you know, catch fish, you know, on the beach, you know, put your net ashore. And my wife's grandmother, her name was Miss Midget, they called her name was Elizabeth. And they had to move some of the people from where to come to the lighthouse. Wasn't home, but like I said, and Daddy said that they had a bunch of women and a hog or two in that boat. And when he went back down where we live, where my home is down back Albert Starnes store on the end, he said it was up to here. And just tiptoed through our weather. And he took that boat with them people in it, in the highest part of the lighthouse fence. And he said they went over the highest part of that lighthouse fence with them people in that hog in there and them people. Went right over top of that high lighthouse fence. And my mother's washing machine and all that, turned the bottom up in the kitchen, washed through the windows, turned the bottom up in the kitchen. And the boats were all ashore, come ashore by the lake, up here in the, about where the coffee shop or violin is. Yeah, they call it there now. And by the post office, washed up there.
So a whale, a couple of years ago, a whale came right out almost to the boat. Big whale. He was blowing water out of the top of it. Yeah. You see him, he came off, I mean, for about a mile. I guess at least a mile you could see where he was coming, you know, towards the boat. And he had like a wake in him, birds were flying over top of him and stuff, water shooting out the top of his head. And then he went by the stern of the boat, and I started beating on the side of my boat. You do that to a porpoise, you know, porpoise come up to you. And one of the boys didn't like that. And then I got to thinking to myself, you know, that's pretty stupid. But that thing does come up to the boat. But I mean, he was big. That's the closest I've ever been to one of them. And he was just swimming along like nothing. And he got off behind the boat and he went down and never did see him anymore. We saw him for about 15 minutes. They were coming right towards us. Well, I don't even know what kind of whale it was. All I know was a big one. A lot of times in the spring and the fall we see these pilot whales, you know, we get right in them. They're only about 30 feet long. You know, they'll swim right with porpoise right beside the boat. And there might be a school on with 200 or 300 in it. And just go, you know, just go there with them. That's right neat to get in them. I mean, I've seen them quite a few times, but I haven't seen a whole lot of big whales. I've never seen one like that came up to us that one day.
The black cat always go to the jump up the window and anybody goes out of that house and always black cat jump up in the window, and so people say that you couldn't stay there. Some way it was. Said one night the preacher he taking his Bible and he said he was going down to stay, and see that night the preacher went in, was in his living room and was sitting down in his rocking chair and just had his Bible. Just at the time he started reading the Bible, said the black cat, he jumped up to the window and said, the black cat said to the preacher, says, ain't nobody here but me and you tonight. Said the old man told him, said, gee, ain't gonna be nobody here record but you.
Me and another boy was coming home from the movie theater one night, and we had a sand road. We walked down the sand road, and I was staying with my great grandmother then, down on the shore side where I was born at. And then we sort of split off, and he went on the sand road on around to his house, and I sort of cut to what we call a path, a little path, you know, just wide enough to walk down. And he went right down on the side of the garden fence. And my great grandfather had a garden there, and the vines that grew up a fence, and it was like a solid wall of vines and so forth, and then right across the path was just everything you can think of: Spanish bayonets, blackberry vines, rose bushes, everything. I mean, a cat couldn't have got through it. It was so thick. And there was something white come out of the corner of that garden. It was a still, slick, calm night. And it came out to the path of where I was walking. And I froze. I mean, I couldn't pick my feet up. It scared me so bad I couldn't move. Couldn't holler. I couldn't do anything. And I could see my great-grandmother sitting on the back porch, and she was sitting out rocking, had a real dim light on. And she was sitting out rocking, waiting for me to, of course I wasn't very old, then, and wait for me to come home. And I don't know, still don't know what it was today. But it drifted across, it went across the path, and went right on through those thickest of the bushes there. I mean, where all the vines were, and where all the, and that's something I never forgot today. And it was like the baby about that high off of the ground, and it just sort of was a mass, like so. It didn't have really no shape of no human or anything like that, and it just sort of disappeared into it. I don't know whether it's some form of, I've talked to a lot of people about it since then. They said it's some form of, something of the humidity or something, Token of death, meaning that somebody died or something. There's always something beforehand that indicates their death, And my mother and my uncle both. My mother was, my sister, her sister, went around to the post office one night and mailed a letter, and they were walking back around the harbor, and there was a gentleman whose house, part of it's still there, over on the opposite side of the harbor. He was an old fellow, lived there by himself, and I think his name was Henry Bragg or something like that. Anyway, there was a ball of fire that came out of his house, and they saw it as it tracked across the sky, and the next morning he was dead. And my uncle one time was sitting up, he was sitting up over, back then it was, you didn't have clinics or nothing, so you did the best you could do for sick people, and anybody was real bad off, everybody on the island took turns sitting up over them. And this happened up in Hatches, and so my mother was there. She went up there to help this, then sit up over this individual, and she was an old woman, and had her like on a cot over in the corner. And he was sitting by the window reading a book, and the window was open, had a crack in the window right next to him, and he just happened to glance up, and had the lights down dim, where she could rest, and the bright lights. And that same thing happened. He said he saw a ball of fire come out of her bed, went right by him, and went right out the window. And he screamed. I mean, it scared the life out of him. And when my mother and my aunt came running out of the kitchen, they were in there fixing coffee or something. My aunt went right to him, and my mother went right to the woman, and she was dead. And it had just been a few minutes, they had just been in there a few minutes. Just, they just about had to get the doctor to him to calm him down.
Have net site in the fall and spring, for just get fish to eat. Goodnight, like we call Springer's Point. And we'd had a hard blow, bad northeaster, I think. And he went down there this, I think it was on, might be on Sunday morning, to see about his boat. And he was walking around the shore side, and this bag had drifted inshore. It had a center block to it, 2 center blocks. And he's all the time picking up stuff and bringing stuff home, you know what I mean?
Hey, right,
and he took his knife and cut and slit that bag, and he saw it, oh Lord. I think he like to keel over. He wasn't long getting up here and getting the sheriffs, and they didn't believe him. And he come back down there and said, Roy, said, I've been eating my dinner. Said, if you're telling me a fib, said, I'm going to kill you. He said, I'm not fibbing. He said, there's a body down here. And so they went down there, and sure enough it was, and they had to get the sheriff's uncle Had to take his truck and drive all the way back to the beach to get down there where it was at, because he couldn't get down this way. Come up down there, back to the breakwater, and put it on the truck. And he was just had his shorts on, and who it was, it must have been mafia or whatever. He was
Sure.
gang. They had chopped his fingers, cut his teeth out, had chopped his toes off, things. And around here, people keeps asking you the same set hard thing over and over and over again. They don't really want to do, you know. And it got to the point, it got on his nerves. Of course, he's had a couple. He's got nervous breakdowns, and he's a nervous type anyway at times. And he just it started getting to him, and then different ones would say, well, they're going to come in here and get you for finding that body and this and that, you know. But they were fooling him, but it got to him. And he got to the point, he come home here, he was in bad shape. He was working for the same man down here. And he had seen him home a number of days. He was bad if he had come home. Nurse couldn't take it. And he'd come in the house and lock the doors, put sticks over the windows. He did a little bit of everything. And I would have to call preacher nights, come up here and sit over and pray with him and everything. I never been through anything like that for 3 or 4 weeks.
Where Sam Jones is buried? Down there.
I just was beginning to tell him, but Mr. Sam Jones from Norfolk, Virginia he's the one that used to own these big dormant places you see right here with dormant windows on it.
Yeah, he was
the castle. Well, my husband works at night, Berkeley Center. He used to own Berkeley Center.
He used to own that green place that Berkeley
he's
Center.
buried down there with his horse next to his horse down there.
And I went down there one time with Linda and their dog, and we went down there and we went to the well, and there was like a bamboo stick laying up on the side of a tree, just like sitting up right over the well on the side of a tree. And I was like, what in the world could have done that? And then, see, the dog just sniffed around the other way and didn't go through the briary part and looked through the briary part. See, he didn't go through the briary part because I kept an eye on him, and Linda did tell him to run away or something like that. And up there, and I turned around and went to the woods, and there's just go back there around the other side of the well, and there's white hair, not from a dog. It was from something else. And we went into the graveyard. Yes, we did where he's buried at. And we haven't stuck into this horse. It's like a big sand dune there. There's horses, and it's like coming up like that and on grass and stuff over it. And then when we were going on my way back, we went down a little bit farther, and down there, and there's like, it's so weird and fresh. Berries down there, and it had a log right in front of it. It was a tree there, and it had a log right in front of the tree, and it had its little bit purple and red berries that stuck together a little bit, ran I suppose, real little, and stuck together on him, bush. And you were in a bush, it was just separated and fresh. And then the smell of them, they're fresh. And then that log had a hole.
And that ain't been but 2-3 weeks ago. Him and Linda over here next door went down there. And I wasn't going down there with just a young'un, a child.
And it was about like...
No, I wouldn't go down there with just a child myself.
It had a hole about that round with 2 feathers in it, 2 bird feathers. Had a clamshell down there. And
that night he couldn't sleep either.
I couldn't.
He was scared to death. Go to sleep. I said, what you want to do next Sunday is you and Lynn trump up and go down Springers.
Yeah, no, there was a whole bunch of stuff down there, and like a fresh onion, not one movie things, but one just sprouted, pulled up out of the ground, still had dirt on it. I'd been right near that tree, and I don't know what, and Well, I kept on hearing, I don't know if Linda heard it, but I didn't mention it to Linda though. And they mentioned you either. But I kept on hearing like it's gonna be. And there weren't me and Linda because we were sitting down. So there's a bench out there, a wooden bench, very old. And that's where I found some stuff down there. You know, not none of that stuff. But the only thing I found down there was this. I found that down there. Me and Linda went down.
See, years ago there was a bunch of old sailors, Puerto Ricans, I think it was, was stranded. Boat capsized out there or something years and years and years ago. Before I was ever born, I guess. And they buried him down in there. And a lot of people seen things, so I don't know. They say ghosts. Well, I don't know whether it's
probably is a ghost.
I don't believe in it, but
and listen out.
It might be if I saw one.
And I kept on hearing, me and Linda were sitting down. Linda would just
But I remember when we were teenagers, we used to ramble around a lot, you know,
Linda
sometimes walking on Sundays down through there, you know.
Linda was just sitting down there and picking, you know, just looking around and stuff. And she wasn't looking my way. I was just looking more straight, you know, from the little bitty path. And I heard some footsteps. They weren't me and they weren't Linda. I heard some footsteps. They weren't the dog because his dog was sitting near the beach, near the water. And the footsteps went crunching on the leaves. I don't know what it was. Come on, crunching went. And then, see, the first one was floating and started running. So when I turned around and started running, I don't know what it was.
So every year we go to Atlantic City. There's anywhere from 6 to 12 of us, and we always take oysters, put them in our room coolers. And you get in our days, you go and snack on a few oysters. So we get a couple styrofoam coolers and put them in there, put ice and newspaper on top of them, wrap them up with duct tape. And when we get to the airport, we said, well, here's some more luggage, you know, we got these here 2 coolers wrapped up. Here you go to Las Vegas and take a chance to spend anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 instead of buying a $15 to $15 cooler. We got these old styrofoam ones like that. Fill them up with oysters and wrap tape around them. Davey done that. Davey Rex. I think it's 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that, and I looked at and they're shooting the suitcases, shooting the luggage off this one of them ones that shoots stuff right hard, you know. So I said, I better get down and catch that. If you don't, it's like they liable to bust. When we got to Las Vegas, here come the oysters, here come the luggage comes down, boxes busted. This was only 3 years ago. The oysters was all, you know, was all over that belt going around. When I seen them, I got the hell out of it. I got up and walked around, I stood like I didn't know. Going around the belt, and I was trying to get them like that. When I did, everybody that was with me, they scampered. And so Rex, you know you can't embarrass him anywhere. He's never met a stranger. And so Rex, he gets there and he starts picking them up. So where goes the oysters? They go down there like this. I see them coming back around. I'm looking one door I'm going to put them in. So some lady comes up and hands me this box, you know, so they come by and I grab about 2 handfuls of them and away they go again. I said, well, there they go again. Well, next time they come by, this lady, she jumps in there and starts helping me. Everybody else has done left in the meantime. So she jumped there and helped me. She said, what are they, clams? I said, no, they're oysters. And then somebody in the airport goes get one of these here little swimming things like like a clothes basket or something. And put them in. And within 5 minutes, as they would go around like this, he had all them tourists, you know, when I was helping him grab them. But I still stood in the background. I didn't even want to know I was with that. And they kept going by about 7 or 8 times until finally I got them all. And I waited for that next bag. Don't mix right in with everybody's luggage and everything, all muddy oysters. I thought they were going to run us out of the airport. And then the other batch never did show up, so I guess they must have busted somewhere else before they got that far.
You know, make mill wine, and that's a home brew that I guess before we probably started making, about 9, 10 years old, use these big glass jugs. They came from the Navy basement.
50 gallons?
No, they weren't 50 gallons. They probably hold, I think they hold more than 5 gallons, about 7, 8 gallons, 10 gallons.
I know what you mean, yeah.
I think you stored acid in them originally or something, but anyhow, you just get some meal, sugar, and yeast, filled it up with water and set it out in the woods, put a piece of tar paper over it or something so it get good and hot in there and let it ferment. And after about 5 or 6 days, start drinking it. You get a right good buzz off of it, yeah.
He originated down in Carteret County the first time I ever had it. These ones down around Cedar Island places. Anybody like a tourist or anybody around, they call them dingbats. I guess because, you know, if you're a tourist, regardless where you're got a PhD or what, you always ask stupid questions. I do the same thing. If I go somewhere, I'll ask questions that other people think are stupid. That's what the Dingbatters is what they call them. It could have come from the Archie Bunker show. I don't know. On Archie Bunker, remember he used to call Edith a dingbat or something? Yeah. I don't know where he picked up the name at, but for the last 15 years or so, they just started using it.
I've heard it spelled Meehonkey.
That was like a sort of like a hide and seek game. Where we just had teams and you mark off certain area of the island we're supposed to go out of, and then every so often you'd holler or honk like a goose or something like that, and they would try to find you, and you could keep moving. And there were some trees right here, especially before they cut them down, going right in front of the store before they put that road in. There was 2 big cedars there that the honeysuckle was so thick that you could climb high as this house and roll right through the honeysuckle and never fall through the branches of the tree, you know, just matted on it. And in places like that, you know, we'd hide.
We had another pig, a little red pig, and I'll tell you, he broke the pen and got out of that pen. But what it was, the men had made mill wine. You don't know what mill wine is?
Yeah, I know what mill wine is.
They had made this mill wine in a keg or a big 5-gallon jug or something. And when the oil drink, when they strained it all off, they just had the saddlings, the meal and the peaches, whatever they put in it. Well, Harry took the saddlings and everything, dumped them in the hog trough. And the hog ate him, and he got drunk. Hey, you ever seen a drunk hog?
No.
And I had a sister was coming over to my house to help me wash. You know, we had cooked. We didn't have running water. And he met her to this hog. He ran all around up and down over the house and jumped on the porch and jumped in and run and couldn't catch him. And everybody running around and couldn't catch that hog. And he was running, you know, just all around, just crazy, turning somersaults. My sister had started, they was going to help me wash. And just as she got to the gate, the hog was coming out. I said, stop. I said, just stop, wait. And she didn't know what I meant. And all that time that hog ran, and he ran right through her legs and turned her over backwards and kept on going down the road. And she screamed, it scared her. And we didn't see that hog in 2 days. He never come back or nothing. So Harry, he was working somewhere on a house, you know, shingling us or something like that. And Harry said, well, I don't know. I said, he never did come back. Said he didn't go to his pen. I said, no. And he had told me if the pig come back and got in that pen, run out with a hammer and nailed him there things up so he couldn't get out. So, but it was 2 days, and finally that evening, there were 2 Coast Guard boys come to the door and knocked on the door. I went and I said, one of them said, Harry lives here, don't you? I said, Harry O'Neill. Said, I would like to have him to come down to the Coast Guard station. And I thought something really bad was wrong. I said, well, I'll tell him he's working. I'll tell him when he comes back. Said, we want to see if he can identify a hog. And I said, well, I'll tell him when he gets off work. When he come from work, I told him, I said, they want you down to Coast Guard station. For what? He said. I said, they got a hog down there and want you to identify it. He said, what? He said, I better go now then. So he left. It was that hog of his. They had spotted him from the cupola swimming. He was swimming towards Portsmouth. They saw this red thing and thought it was somebody red-headed. They thought it was a person, and they went after it with a PT boat, you know. They went after it, said there was a person overboard over there. And when they went after that hog, they thought it was a person. And he was over there by the hog shoal. They got a shoal over there named Hog Shoal. That's where the hog was at, when they got him off the hog shoal. And it brought him home, they put him in the pen. Well, you went out there and you poured his food in his trough, you know, they just supposed to have, like middlings and stuff and all. You wouldn't eat it. He just laid there and slept. All that day he didn't eat nothing. and it just let him slip. So you had to go dump that old food I had put you in, and it still wouldn't eat. He still lay there. So when Harry come home again that evening for supper, he said, "Did he eat anything? Did the horse eat anything?" I said, "No, he ain't." I said, "He ain't moved." And I said, "He's still laying there." He said, "Well, if you had a hangover like he's got,"
One time they toilet papered his house, and there must have been a case of toilet paper sprung. I mean, looked like it snowed. I mean, that was...
It must have been in September.
That
I
was
came home
art.
from work.
Somebody need to take a picture of that.
That
took so much time. That was art.
That one really made me mad because it was 2 Coast Guard guys stopped by and said, "Are you going to watch TV tonight?" And I
They
said,
did
"No."
it. Yeah, they did it on your cook stove too.
See, I had the pilot's light on my gas cook stove in the kitchen, and all that pilot light would have had it done in, it would have went up in flame. But they done it at that household. Now, I went 3/4 time to a dance that night. When I come home, I had to go in the yard and get a stick and beat my way in the house. I bagged up 7 big garbage bags of toilet paper, and I carried it to the station. And I went down the hall, and I beat on every door and run every boy in there up. I said, "Now I want to know who in the hell put this toilet paper in my house." Not a damn one of them. They laughed and laughed. Half of them cussed me out because I woke them up. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. Next morning, I loaded it all up. I carried it down there. Ronnie Van was the chief. I said, "I don't know who did it, but I want you to see that whoever did it has to wipe themselves on all 7 bags of this because it come from down here." Let me tell you, it was Tilka and Al Jacobson. And he made him take a bag of that at a time and set it in the stalls until every damn bit of it was gone. But I came home. It was in September. I come home. Wes was coming down that night, and 2 friends of mine was down here from New Jersey. And I come home from work. They went out to dinner. I had gone to work, and I got off that night. And they came home and said, "Oh, Kenny's having a party. Somebody's giving Kenny a surprise party." And they thought it was streamers. And Joe said, "Well, this ain't streamers, it's toilet paper." And one of the girls that works for me from San Francisco, she and one of the guys down there that was a seasonal ranger had been here. And I mean to tell you, this house was wrapped. Not only, up here, but upstairs. The refrigerator, they had wrapped all my fruit, my vegetables in the refrigerator, but that was all wrapped.
I have known 2 girls and boys too that went away to school, and they would not tell anybody they were from Ocracoke.
Why?
I guess that we were isolated, and maybe maybe somebody had laughed at something they said, or I don't know why. But I've always told them I was from Ocracoke. Never have ever told them from anywhere else, and people did not know where Ocracoke was. They did not. When I went to school in Andrew, my daddy sent a barrel full of oysters in the shell to me, and I gave them all around in that neighborhood. Well, of course, they didn't know how to open oysters, and nobody there had an oyster knife. They had used any kind of knife they had, and they'd hit them with a hammer to break the shell, and they had never been to an island, as far as that's concerned. In fact, even up in Maryland, one time this lady found out that, she asked me, I think, we were talking where I was from, and I told her Ocracoke Island, and she said, "You live on an island?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And she sort of frowned, and she thought that was terrible. "Well, what do you eat?" I said, well, honey, you name it, and we eat it. And I don't know any place that I have been. Now, I haven't been out of the USA, but I've been everywhere, I think, just about. I haven't been to Texas and the western states, but I have never been anywhere where people eat any better than they do here on the island.
Oh yeah, Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene, good night, Irene. I will see you in my dreams. Sometimes I lived in the country, sometimes I lived in the town, sometimes I have a great notion to jump in the river and drown. Oh yeah! Oh yeah, I got you now. Think of something. Oh yeah. When they cut down the old fallen tree, haul it up way to the mill, make a cabin up on for the sweet Yaupon when they cut down the old fallen tree. She'll be coming around the mountain, here she come, oh yeah. Coming around the mountain, here she come. She'll be coming around the mountain, she'll be coming around the mountain, she'll be coming around the mountain, here she come. She'll be dancing for horses, here she come. She'll be dancing for horses, when she comes. She'll be dancing for horses, she'll be dancing for horses, she'll be dancing for horses, when she comes. Oh